Okay, go.
Okay. This is not my forte, but I'm trying to make a video so y'all know what you're doing. So you're going to put your facing pieces together, right sides together. You're going to pin them where the notches are. Remember, trust the notches. Once you've pinned that and you've sewn it together on the 5/8 inch line, you're going to burst your seams, and then you're going to take it over to the serger and start here and serge all the way around, keeping those seams open all the way around, again keeping these open, and then come off of this edge. Don't worry about the inside. We're going to leave that alone for right now. So that's your facing, and you can set that aside. For your sleeves, let's see, I've already sewn that together. But what you would do, remember in class where I told you you're going to take, go over to this machine right there, and you're going to make sure that the stitch length is on a 5 because we're going to do a basting stitch. And so you're going to baste at the 3/8 line, which looks like right here, and the 5/8 line, which is about right here, from notch to notch on your sleeve. Your sleeve will be open. It won't be sewn together like this. But you'll just go along the line from notch to notch. And remember, you're going to leave yourself long tails, and you're not going to back stitch, because later on we're going to use this to kind of go like this and distribute the ease. All right. You've also at this point already put your pocket in and sewn that on top, so that's done. And the first thing it says to do after that is to do your shoulder seams. So that's these right here. And you can see that I've matched up my notches, and I'm trusting my notches, and then I'm pinning it all the way across, and then I'm sewing on the 5/8 inch line, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Once you've done both of those, then you're going to do your side seams. And your side seams you're going to do from right here at the armhole all the way down to where you put your little X. And you can barely see mine, but remember the dot that we marked on our pattern, that's it's an X for, this is called a vent right here. So that's marking where you're going to stop. So you're going to go from the armhole all the way to your X, back stitch at the beginning and the end, 5/8 inch seam allowance. Once you've done that, then you're going to go over to the serger. And actually, before you go to the serger, you're going to take one side of your seam allowance, go like this, and press it with the iron so that all of this other junk is out of your way, because you don't want it to get caught. See how that wants to roll up under there? You don't want it to get caught underneath of the serger, and that can happen and you can get a hole in your garment. So you want to iron it first, and what I like to do is do all of my serging at the same time. So I iron one side on each one, and then I go and serge it, and then I bring it back to the iron, and then I do the other side and iron that out of the way, and the other side here and here and here, and then serge them all at the same time. So once you've got your top and your front and your back sewn together and everything is serged, then you're ready to insert your sleeves. After you've done this basting stitch up here, then you're going to put your sleeves together with right sides together, fold it in half, and there were notches here, but I serged them off already. And when you fold them in half, then you're going to sew them together on the 5/8 inch line, burst your seams, and then serge each side separately. Okay. Also, if you have fabric that is the same on front and back, meaning there's not a right side and a wrong side, then you need to make sure that you're sewing two different sleeves. And what I mean by that is, look right here. So you've got this notch here and a fat notch here, a skinny notch and a fat notch. And then if you look at my other sleeve, which it was easy for me to make sure that I did my sleeves right because I had a fabric with a print on it. But if you don't have a print, then you could get confused and sew two of the same sleeves. So here's one that's like that, and here's my other one. And you'll notice that on my other sleeve, the notches are opposite. So I've got the skinny down below and the fat up top. And here is the skinny up top and the fat down below. So if you're using a fabric that's like, say, a solid color, just make sure that when you pin them together, and if it's pinning where they're both the same, take one, open it up, and fold it the opposite way. and that'll make 2 different sleeves. This is important because when you go to insert your sleeve in your top, you want to match up your notches. See how your top has a skinny notch and a fat notch? That tells you how to insert your sleeve. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to figure out what sleeve goes in this side. And I'm always going to put right sides together. So I'm turning my sleeve right side out, and I'm going to try and shove it in here. And I'm matching this seam right here with the armhole seam. And when I do that, see these 2 notches? They don't match. I've got a fat and a skinny. So this is the wrong sleeve. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to grab my other sleeve. Turn it right side out. And I'm going to put it on the inside here. Again, the same way, matching my seam with my armhole seam. So I've got right sides together, seam to seam, and then this seam up here at the top on my shoulder, I'm gonna match up where my little X is. Y'all see my X? So that's the X that I drew, and I'm gonna mark that or match that up right there. So we're gonna pause, and I'm gonna grab some.
We're ready.
Okay, so I've got my sleeves still in here, and I got my pins, and I'm going to match up this seam, the armhole seam, and I'm going to take a pin, and just like we do with our quilts, I'm going to go through the seam right here, and then I'm going to check and see if I made it through the seam here, because we want these to match up, these 2 seams to match up. And I almost did it, so I didn't have to adjust too much. If you need to adjust, just pick it up and adjust it, and then once you get it right, then you're going to pull it through and pin it. I also want to pin these things open, your seam allowances. We want those to stay open to reduce bulk. So I'm going to pin those open like this, with 1 pin on each side. Oh. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find that little X, which is right here, and I'm going to match it up with the top of the top seam, the shoulder seam, and I'm going to come on the outside and pin it. Sometimes when you're pinning a sleeve, it's easy to get confused and pin some on the outside here, and then on this side start pinning them on the inside. You want to have them all on the outside, because when you go to sew it, you don't want pins up underneath. That's going to mess up your machine, and your pin will get stuck. So again, I want to pin open these seam allowances so that they stay nice and smooth. Also, I want to point out that when I'm pinning this together, I'm keeping this edge matched up. I'm always matching up the edge. Okay, so next I'm going to match up my notches. I'm going to shove all these little strings in here and get them out of my way. And I'm going to match my skinny notch to skinny notch. And then I'm going to match my fat notch to my fat notch. Keeping those edges matched up. Okay, so now we're going to pull on these strings. Remember, we did these basting stitches, and this is what it's used for. Remember when we talked about with our quilts, when we have sometimes some extra fabric, you can see this right here is shorter than this. Can y'all see that extra gathering, that extra fabric? So that's what this little stitch is going to do. We're going to pull on this, and we're going to make this fabric gather a little so that it will be the same size as that. So you see how I just kind of lightly gathered it? I'm not creating any puckers like this. We don't want to gather it where it creates puckers because those will be little glitches. You'll sew across that and then it'll be little glitches. We don't want that. So we want to lightly gather. And see, when I gathered it, now I made it too small. So when that happens, you just pull on it like this. And that kind of pulls out the gathering stitches. You can also pull on it like this. And what you want is for you to be able to pull on this sleeve and for that to pull tight and for your fabric to fit tight up against there. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to work on this section now. So I'm going to pull from pin to pin. I'm going to pull it and then pinch it in the middle, making sure that that edge is lined up, and I'm going to pin it in the middle. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. What this does is the middle, the middle, the middle. Remember, it's redistributing the ease, that extra fabric. So I'm pulling, I'm pinching, and I'm pinning in the middle of each section. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to do the middle of this section. Pull, pinch, pin. And then I'm going to go in the middle of these little sections. Pull, pinch, pin. Still keeping that lined up. So remember when we were doing our basting stitches, I told y'all that this one was 3/8 inch and this one was 5/8 inch. 5/8 inch is the seam allowance that we're going to sew all the way around this sleeve. And so just because it's, see how it's like gappy looking up here and it kind of ruffles out up here, that's fine. We don't care about that. We want to see down here on the 5/8 inch line, we want to make sure that the fabric lays flat right there. Okay, so no matter what it's doing up here, we don't care. We only care about that it lays flat right there. And this looks good, it looks flat. So we're gonna pause and I'm gonna pin the rest. I forgot to show y'all one thing. So this section right here, you've got a little bit of ease. See how that's a little bit bigger than this side? So, and there are no strings here. So what you wanna do is just pull it and stretch it like that. Pinch it in the middle and pin it. And then here again, pull it, pinch it, pin it. And then in the middle of that, pull it, pinch it, pin it. And then I would go back and pin in the middle of these two. I know this seems like an extreme amount of pins, but the more pins the better because it's going to keep your fabric nice and flat and everything right where you want it to be. Okay,
We're good.
okay. So I just wanted to show you, I'm ready to stitch in my sleeve. See, I have all of my pins, and if you look on the inside of my sleeve and I'm checking along that stitching line and I'm making sure that I don't see any like folds or anything crazy that might turn into a glitch when I go to sew it. All right, and so I wanted to show you, the first thing you're gonna do is pop this little thing off here. See, it just slides right off. And now we have an arm that we can slide our sleeve over. And I wanted to make sure that you were aware that sometimes, well, when we were sewing our pockets, people were moving the needle over, so just make sure that when you sit down to sew again that you put your needle back in its home position. And then this is set to a basting stitch, and so for our sleeves and any stitches that we want to actually stay in place, we're going to switch it back up to a 2.5. Your machine should be set up, but I just want you to, a reminder to, that's how it's supposed to be. So now we're going to slide this on there. And we're going to start right here at the armhole because it's going to be down here, and if I make too thick of a stitch when I'm back stitching, it's okay because it's going to be in the armhole and nobody will ever see it. So you're going to start there and slide this sleeve like this over your little arm there. So I'm gonna line it up, and remember again, your 5/8 line is this first long line right here. So I'm gonna line up the fabric with that first long line. And I'm gonna put my presser foot down, and I'm gonna go ahead and start. Also, as you're stitching this in place, you want to pull out the pins. I know usually I say you can stitch right over them, and you can, but there's so many in here that you probably want to go ahead and pull them out, just because now we're kind of tempting fate as far as, are we going to break a needle, because there's just so many pins. So you should probably go slow and take them out as you go. So I'm just going to start, and look, I broke a needle. Wow. Film this. Okay, so that's crazy. I just told y'all all about breaking a needle, and there it is. I broke it. So this will be a good point in the video to show you how to change a needle if you need to. Good. So if you break a needle, you're going to ask your lab assistant or me to come in here and get you a replacement needle. They're in these boxes, and we're sewing with the ones that say 12. So I'm going to take one of these needles. Go ahead and pause.
Okay.
So I pulled this little toolbox out of my very top drawer, and inside the toolbox is the screwdriver. We're going to just unscrew it. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So you unscrew a little, and then it just pops out. And there's a flat side to your needle. So you're going to turn the flat side to the back, shove it back up in there, and then you're going to tighten it back again. And that's all there is to it. Okay, let's try this again. So this time I'm just going to go ahead and pull all of these out, all the ones that are underneath my presser foot. Y'all, we could not have planned that better. I can't believe that happened. But anyway, now you see. So I'm going to start a little and back stitch. And then as I get close to the needles, I'm just going to stop. Remember, I'm watching again right here. So this is another reason why you want to kind of go slow, because now you got to watch needles and the edge of your fabric. But if you go slow, then you don't have to redo it. And that's nice to get it done right the first time. See, I missed that one, but it went right over it. Okay. I've worked my way around, and I'm just slowly pulling it under here, and now I'm at this seam. So I wanted to come back in and show y'all. I want to make sure that this stays down like that. So see, I'm kind of shoving it under there with my finger. So you want to make sure that it goes in there like that, so that all of that stays flat like we wanted it to. Alright, so now I'm almost back to where I started. That's where I started. So I'm going to just finish up here. Again, I want that to go underneath there. Oh, look, it's wanting to curl. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot, shove it back underneath there, put my presser foot back down. And then I want to meet up with my line of stitching and then back stitch back over that spot. There were a few pins that I decided they were far enough apart that I was going to just take a chance and sew over, so that's what these are right here. Okay, so now we're going to see how I did. So I unpinned it all, and I'm going to pull it through like this, and we're going to check and see. So far, so good. So what I'm looking for are little folds and I got no glitches. Yay!
Hey.
I was nervous. So anyway, this is what it should look like. It should look smooth all the way around. If there's any areas where it looks like it's folded over like this and then it's sewn, those are glitches. So if that happens, what you want to do is just kind of pinch the area where there's a glitch, and you want to go back, and then where you've pinched, you can mark, and you can rip out only from here to about here. Like, only rip out that area that's messed up. Don't rip the whole thing, just that area that's messed up. And then you can stretch it and repin it. And then when you start over where you started ripping, and you back stitch to secure that stitch again, sew it back up, and then back stitch again where you meet up with your line of stitching again. Okay, so what we would want to do now at this point, this is a perfect example of why we wanted to use a contrasting color for our basting stitch. So it's easy for me to see, and remember, it's a basting stitch, so I can just pull it out like this. I don't have to pull out the seam ripper and take 10 minutes of lab time that, you know, could be spent on other things. You just pull it like this, and then you come back out like this, stretch it back out. It should pull out really, really easy because we did not back stitch, and it's just a basting stitch. And you can pull it again, find the end and pull it again. Okay, pause. All right, so now we've got our seam, and it's sewn. Look how pretty, all the way around. And now we are ready to serge this. I've got my scissors coming over to my serger. The serger has the nice little tail, so I know that it's good to go. I'm going to turn it on right here. This is all just a reminder. I'm going to lift the presser foot. So now, excuse me, when you're doing your sleeve, you want to do it in the round, okay? So, and there is no arm for you to shove the sleeve over like you did on the sewing machine. This time you have to put the sleeve underneath of the presser foot. And again, like everything else, where there's going to be bulk, like extra stitches, you always want to start in the armhole. So we're going to start here with the armhole. And I'm going to work really, really diligently to make sure that all of this stuff stays out of my way, because this is how accidents happen and you get a hole cut in your PJ top right after you just spent all of that time putting in your perfect sleeve. So, all right. So let's see. Actually, I'm going to do it a little bit further so I know that the presser foot doesn't pick up that. I want to keep it nice and flat. All right. So I'm going to check the underneath often. And again, I'm watching right here. I want this to be lined up right here. And remember, anything that hangs over is going to get cut off. And so those little extra things right there, they're cut off. They're getting cut off, and that's good. This little notch is going to get cut off. As I go, I'm going to slowly rotate the sleeve around. And again, I'm going to go really slow, and I'm going to make sure that none of that fabric is stuck up under there, because that would make me cry. Serging that notch off. Slowly rotating it around, and I'm using my finger to feel underneath too to make sure that none of that fabric is getting caught up under there. I'm gonna pause. Okay, so I'm getting close to where I started. There's my little tail. Just gonna go slow again. Cut my tail right off, and once I've cut my tail off, then I'm gonna just kind of turn my hand. Again, I'm not pulling because I don't want the machine to come undone. I'm just letting it roll right off, and then I'm cutting and leaving the tail. So this is when it's done. All nice and neat with no raw edges. And these are laying flat. See how they're laying flat on both sides? That's what we want. At this point, once you get both of these sleeves done this way and everything is pulled out and you've got your sleeves serged, then you're good to go. You're caught up.